Thank you very much for sticking around for part two of this great interview with Dr. Jim Willie, who is the editor of the Hat Trick Letter. Can be found at goldenjackass.com. And without any further ado, we're going to pick up right where we left off. Thank you very much. Is that
Yeah,
coming?
a lot of very destructive. Go ahead.
Is that coming in the near future? I mean, that's a pretty big deal. What you're just describing right there, Jim. Because I mean, if you think that, if you're saying that the BRICS nations as a whole, 114 or whatever the number is, are going to unite and say, well, we don't want any more dollars or treasuries. We want a gold note. I mean, how soon, or do you have any data to support when that may happen, or how that's going to happen, or what is the, how's it going to how are we going to transition from the U.S. dollar to a more global, to a different global currency, and how are the BRICS going to interact with that?
Well, I think the BRICS are going to latch on to the intermediary transition step that I described in RMB settlement.
Right.
Because the Chinese are not doing unfettered, unsterilized QE bond monetization with coverage behind the scenes of lots and lots of derivative failures. The Chinese aren't doing that.
Right.
In other words, the Chinese RMB is a more trustworthy currency. Okay, I'd like to point out, you've got a number of movements out there where the Chinese RMB is in progress, taking root. I named the RMB trade. I named the various nations of the BRICS alliance. They will want and demand. If you're manufacturing and you're shipping, you call the shots on what you receive in payment.
Right.
And they're going to start refusing treasury bill. This is not a complex concept, except for the 90% of the morons living in the United States. Oh, the dollar is as good as gold. No, it's not. It's not good for anything. It's not even worth what toilet paper. Toilet paper has value until
people want it.
Until you use it to wipe. Then it's worth what the dollar's worth. Okay, you've also got 32 nations involved with a yuan swap facility,
right,
where all their bilateral trade with China is settled in yuan. Like Brazil has 5 big banks, China has 3 giant banks. They settle their bilateral trade on a net basis in RMB through those 2 banking groups. That's called the yuan swap facility. And if you think that won't integrate into the West, you're dead wrong and haven't done your homework. Because London has it, France has it, Switzerland has it, Germany has it, Australia has it, New Zealand has it, Canada has it, U.S. does not.
And Japan.
Japan is different. I'm not sure they use a yuan swap facility. They're always walking on eggshells. All right. So you've got the yuan swap facility, you've got RMB trade settlement, and now you've got another very powerful channel. We call it, not me, but it is called indirect exchange. And that's where the dollar is being dumped. Now, even though it's not a yuan, Chinese RMB phenomenon, it is a phenomenon in the other direction of dumping dollars. Not only do you have countries refusing to buy treasury bonds, you've got big nations like Russia and China setting up their Gazprom pipeline networks, and China's going to pay for the construction in treasury bonds. So my guess is that Russia will receive the treasuries and convert them to Chinese RMB. So the dumping process has a flip event of converting to something once they're dumped. You have all kinds of nations of the world, like Nigeria, accepting $1 billion in Chinese payments, funds, to build a railroad, to build a port facility. it's not just Nigeria. It's a lot of different African countries. They take the U.S. Treasury bonds that China dumps on them, and these countries must do something with them. I don't think Nigeria is holding as many treasuries as they used to. Okay, now let me try to get to the timing. This is a very difficult question. When is this going to happen? Well, how about in the early months of 2014? That's when the reset's going to happen. Oh, no, I'm sorry. There was an interruption with the Ukraine war. We had a plan for the reset, and I believe the reset would have involved gold trade notes used as letters of credit. But we had a Ukraine war, and the U.S. suddenly found itself in the lucky, fortunate position of having 33 more tons of gold when they moved the Kiev central bank gold to New York for, quote, safekeeping. Just like they removed the 144 tons of gold held by Gaddafi's account in the London banks. Now, the British are going to hold it for safekeeping. So, we don't know when this reset's going to take place. I don't know that there is a formal date where everybody is on the same page and it's like, March of 2016. Instead, it's a lot uglier. Instead, the reality is there are gigantic hoards of gold that are, how should I say, in contention, in competition, in pursuit. Large hoards of gold. I don't want to mention volume. Just think of it as a lot larger than Fort Knox. And the U.S. government has been very, very busy trying to steal it. They've been very busy trying to murder their owners. They've been very busy murdering their lawyers. And in return, these Asian wealthy groups have been murdering certain U.S.-based attorneys and U.S. elite figures who are in charge of this process. Because the U.S. wants to delay the reset until they can successfully steal the gold. It's what the U.S. does. Our elites stole Fort Knox. They arranged to drain Canada's gold. They've arranged to steal most of Western Europe's gold through what they call hypothecation, which means let's steal it and leave a little IOU certificate behind in their vault chamber. So when they come looking for it, if they ever get past our guards at the door, they can see some pieces of paper with some really fancy ink and etching and maybe even a little gilding on the paper. In other words, gold leaf lettering. So they lost their bars and they got some gold leaf lettering. So the U.S. is delaying and delaying through additional wars. The war in Syria is to delay the reset. We put pressure on Pakistan to stop the Iran-Pakistan gas pipeline that had some Saudi participation. I believe that there were some Saudi contractors or Saudi funding agents for that. So that was interrupted. We're now attacking through ISIS. I shouldn't get into all the ISIS. ISIS is so nasty. It's U.S. government security agencies murdering mercenaries to go out there and steal oil fields, steal cash in central banks, behead people with faked videos. Whenever you see an ISIS beheading video, look for the absence of squirting blood from the neck cavity. That's your hint, you morons out there who don't know jack shit about science or your human body. Blood pressure results in squirts 4 feet long out of the neck after a beheading. You don't have that in the ISIS faked videos. So, as for when, it's now not a question of when is the plan for the reset of the currencies. It's not a function anymore of a date. It's a function of when does the system break down so a reset is done during the breakdown as a solution for the collapse of the global economy. That's, I think, the big question. Not when is the reset going to happen. When is the system going to break down to the point where we're now getting acceleration in the breakdown with feedback loops to guarantee the breakdown so that nations of the world hold emergency meetings in order to bring about an implementation of a new system with gold trade notes used as letters of credit. And I believe we just had a meeting a few weeks ago in Ufa, Russia, with the BRICS and SCO, Shanghai Cooperative Organization. I think the BRICS and their summit meeting had a major agenda item. What are we going to do to speed up the implementation process because the treasury bond market is cratering and crashing? I think we're really, really close. I heard The Voice share some of his interpretation and perceptions in April and May. He said the plan for implementation of the reset, it's not done by the United States. It's done by the East and the BRICS nations. Be done against the resistance of the United States and London and Western Europe. The plan for implementation by the BRICS of the reset is in the first few months of 2016. And in the last few weeks, he said, Jim, I don't think we're going to get there. I think it's going to have to be sooner because the treasury bond market, which is the foundation for the entire global financial system, both banks and currencies, the treasury bonds are breaking, and they're accelerating in their breakdown, and recognition is coming of that breakdown. So I'm starting to believe now that we're going to see some critical events in the next few months, the next 6 months, that show evidence of the new structure coming into place. And I think it's going to be centered on RMB trade as a standard for trade settlement, namely payment for shipments. RMB usage for payment is going to be a main piece of the next implemented stage. And then you're going to see some highly disruptive stages where the BRICS announce that they're going on a large-scale treasury bond conversion process into gold bullion. And that's going to be simultaneous with some kind of a release of the gold price. You cannot have $1 trillion worth of treasury bond, just, an odd trillion. That's a lot of money. By the way, if you stacked $1 trillion $1 bills, you'd go halfway to the moon. Okay, you're talking about a lot of money. A lot of money. If you stack $1 billion in $1 bills, you go into the stratosphere of the earth. 1,000 times that, and you go halfway to the moon. So $1 trillion is thrown around like a figure that's not a great big deal anymore. Oh yeah, it is a big deal. We just stole $1.2 trillion of Japanese government pension funds. We put out $1 trillion worth of government debt in the United States every year. We have $500 billion in trade deficit in the U.S. economy. It's called capital hemorrhage. So I think we're going to see the BRICS nations announce that their new development bank is going to be a conversion window of treasuries and other sovereign bond paper into gold. Now, I like to point out, a very simple point. If the new development bank is so important for development and projects for the BRICS nations, why did they institute an Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, the AIIB, if it's not for development? So they've already got a development bank. Why do they need another development bank? And people say, oh, gee, it's the Asian one. Pardon me. Take a look at the Asian AIIB bank, and you see there are a lot of projects that are not in Asia. So what they are is an Asian core to the AIIB bank for infrastructure projects, and maybe they're for infrastructure projects for the benefit of the Asian nations, but for, say, port facilities in Brazil and Mexico that connect with Asia. So here's my conclusion. The new development bank is not for development. It's a misnomer to keep the dumbass Westerners asleep. It's for a conversion of sovereign debt paper into gold. They didn't want to call it the BRICS Gold Central Bank Fund because it would be attacked with viruses. Maybe some of its leaders and officers would be murdered by the U.S. government, a specialty of the U.S. So they call it the New Development Bank, only 2 years later to create a development bank called the AIIB. In other words, the New Development Bank is a gold central bank conversion window. And I believe they've been using Belgium as a warehouse. So perhaps some of the BRICS, namely Belgium, Luxembourg, Ireland, Cayman, Switzerland, some of the BRICS 800 billion in treasury bonds sitting in the Belgian central bank is really Chinese-owned U.S. treasury bonds soon to be converted to gold. And while all this is happening, you guys, the gold mining industry is being absolutely destroyed.
Yep.
And silver mining industry.
Yes.
So, there's a lot going on. We covered a lot of ground, and I don't have a direct answer. When people really pin me down and say, when is this going to happen? I say, well, the 45th of August. But Jim, there aren't 45 days in August. And I say, ask a stupid question, you get a stupid answer. Do you have another one? No, I don't know. We don't know, for instance, 3 months from now, whether the U.S. is going to invade and declare war against another nation in order to steal their gold, interrupt the BRICS development toward non-dollar platforms, and delay more time. We don't know the U.S. next war plan because it's a chain of wars. We're a serial warmongering nation. I'm still a U.S. citizen. I don't like what's going on. I haven't liked it for a long time. I didn't like it before. I didn't like it before I had my life threatened.
I'm sorry to hear that. I mean, I think that we are going to go to war because that's going to be the last ditch effort to keep the dollar in place. And if things are in fact imploding the way that you have described, then that'll be the cover and the distraction that's necessary to pull it off and to be able for the United States to be able to say, well, they did it, So we had to attack them. They created the financial problem, so we're bombing them.
Well, it could be. I tend to think not. I've got a number of reasons why I don't think that will happen. I think cooler heads will prevail. I don't think certain devices will properly work. I don't want to get into this topic too deeply, but I will say this. If the U.S. offers another war, and it's a regional war, it's going to result in a tremendous reaction to dump treasury bonds. And we're going to see the Federal Reserve have to admit that they're gobbling up all the treasury bonds that are being dumped by foreign central bank systems.
So if we fire a nuke, then you're saying they're just going to fire the ultimate nuke, which is to just start dumping the currency.
Yeah, the treasury
flood
bonds.
the market. Yeah, flood the market with treasury bonds.
And you're going to see you won't really see the interest rates rise. You won't see the bond for the 10-year yield. You won't see the bond yield go up. You won't see it go up to 3, 4, 6% quickly. No, you'll see the Fed making an admission that they're covering the dumped bonds with fresh money. Look, when you've got unsterilized printing of money to buy things, you don't have any market effect on the bond yield. And that's when the dumping becomes universal and simultaneous with nations of the world saying, we don't want your toilet paper treasury bills to cover the payment for either oil or container vessels filled with finished products. That's the global rejection of the dollar that I find very disappointing. Some people I communicate with, they say, Jim, the world can't reject the dollar. And I say, well, the manufacturing nations can and will, and you'll be surprised by it because you've been surprised by everything that's happened since 2001. And I have not. You know, there's a powerful psychological factor that I'd like to close on, if you don't mind. It's the psychology of the correct forecast reaction. Make a correct forecast. It's not known to be correct yet. The person, like the jackass, is called an idiot. Because that makes no sense. That can't be. Then the breakdown becomes more clear. The factors line up. Like, for instance, Germany flipping east, turning its back on the European Union and the United States. I'm called an idiot for that now. A year from now, year and a half from now, I will not be called an idiot for that. Instead, take, for instance, a correct forecast. I said back in 2008, we're going to head towards 0%. Oh, no, Jim, that's stupid. That's ridiculous. We could never do that. The system would never tolerate it. The dollar would be sold off. I said, no, don't worry about the dollar being sold off because we got that covered. We'll do QE, just like the Japanese did. Oh, no, Jim, you're following up your stupid 0% forecast with another stupid QE forecast. Okay, so both of them came true. And when the 0% came in, I said it'll be 0% forever. And I was called stupid for that. How could it be forever? You can never do that. It'll kill the dollar. I said, don't worry. We'll cover that with QE to infinity. Oh, gosh. Then we had QE, and I said, see, we got QE. Now it's going to be QE to infinity. They will never take it away. Oh, Jim, that's another stupid forecast. You got all these stupid forecasts. I said, yeah, but you overlooked how the 0% and the QE were correct forecasts. And then I go on to the next forecast that they call stupid. And then, you know, here's a funny thing that is often said to me. Well, everybody knew that would come to be. And I say to them, well, how come nobody said that it would be? And how come the person who went public about it, namely me, the jackass, was called an idiot by guys like you, morons like you, who I'll never hear from again after the correct forecast becomes well known. So, the correct forecast is called stupid until it becomes true. Then it's called everybody knew it anyway. It's obvious. No, it's obvious that you read it in the news, you moron. Now the new one is the German will flip east. I'm stupid for that. Yet my analytic points, I've got 4, are all being reinforced every single month for the turn east by Germany. And here's my last forecast that some people are calling stupid right now, and it will come to pass as sure as night follows day. The United States government is going to realize they're in a bind, and they must come up with a domestic-only currency, and I don't care what they're calling it. I'm calling it the Scheiß dollar, the new Scheiß dollar, which is German for shit. And I've got some German clients who correct me and say, Jim, it doesn't just mean shit. Shice means refuse, garbage, floating rubbish on the pond or whatever. I said, okay, but it also means shit. It comes out of your backside. And he said, yeah, there's shice in the toilet. Yes, okay. All right, well, the new shice dollar is going to come as a response, as an emergency measure by the U.S. government, and they've already got it in planning. They've already got warehouses full. Okay, they've got all the facilities waiting. They're just waiting for the flipping of the switch. So why would the new shice dollar come to be for domestic-only usage? Because nations of the world, with their heavy industry, emerging market nations, and other nations that produce and export, like Korea, like Bangladesh, they are going to be shipping to the United States and telling them, we want RMB or we want nothing. So the ship will not hit the port unless you give us RMB or something besides your little toilet paper with filaments in it called US dollars. We don't want your treasury bills anymore, which are the trading vehicle that earns a yield or used to earn a yield before it earned zero. So foreign nations are going to demand no more payments in treasury bills. When that happens, the U.S. government's going to come up with their new shice dollar, but with a better name and a deep foundation lie. They're going to say it's gold-backed. But the BRICS nations are going to be making the rules because the U.S. has contaminated with toxic dollars the whole system, has created wars, has significant bond fraud and counterfeit, all through mortgages and treasuries. I named only a few examples. There's a lot more. JP Morgan's in the hot seat for selling twice as many treasuries as were issued, for instance, counterfeit. So the U.S. government is going to be forced to do a domestic-only dollar and be forced as a result to devalue it. The Chinese have demanded that the U.S. come up with a domestic-only dollar, which will free up the foreign-held dollars, and they will be no longer under U.S. aegis and rules. It'll be under the perhaps more IMF rules dictated by China, which now controls the IMF. But we're going to see, I think, a 50% quick devaluation of the new dollar, the shice dollar. The Chinese have said, we want a 50% devaluation in this new dollar for domestic usage only. You do not have control any longer, they're going to say, of foreign-held dollars. You need your own dollar because you're going to lose control of foreign-held dollars. I'm talking about banking accounts in Switzerland, Hong Kong, Singapore, London, elsewhere. Foreign-held U.S. dollar accounts. U.S. is going to lose control. The FATCA rules are going to go away. U.S. is going to lose control. And the Chinese want a 50% devaluation of the new dollar, and the U.S. said to them, no, we can't do that. But will you settle for two back-to-back 30% devaluations? And the Chinese have said yes. Now, here's some little devaluation mathematics. If you have a 30% devaluation, you retain 70% of your value. If you do it a second time, you retain 70% of 70%, which is 49%. That's why the U.S. suggested back-to-back 30%, because it meets the requirement of the Chinese, who are the principal debt holders. 50% is coming. When you get a 50% decline in the value of the new shice dollar, it means all the imports are going to double in price. How do you think that's going to be met with the U.S. economy? Cause a few problems, maybe? This is what's coming, and this is precisely why the U.S. government is doing everything they can to delay the reset, including murdering owners of vast gold hoards. To protect the American way of life. What is the American way of life?
That's a good question.
Good question. What are we preserving? We're preserving banker elite rule and what I call the fascist business model that was imposed in 2001, and its banner cry, battle cry, is too big to fail. We're seeing the wreckage and the bitter fruit of the fascist business model right now in insolvent banks, unlimited rescue of the financial sector at the expense of the tangible economy, causing a black hole in treasury bonds, drawing in funds from around the world, wrecking the tangible economy, preserving the dollar and our way of life. Our way of life is basically fraud, murder, and corporate poison.
And theft.
And theft, right. Just take a look at the chemtrails and the Monsanto food systems. There's your poison. There's a lot more poison, like Halliburton's fracking. They contaminated the California water systems, at the same time putting up off the Catalina Island, a twin barrier to prevent rainfall in Florida, in California. So
hey, why would they? Commercials that say fracking's okay, not a problem.
Who pays for those commercials?
I'm just kidding. Fracking's a disaster for the environment.
It's a disaster for everything.
Well, since when is fracking worthy of having laws that prevent citizen inquiries onto what chemicals are putting into the ground?
Into the groundwater, more specifically.
They've got in laws they've got in laws now to prevent citizens from getting at the truth of anything. The Freedom of Information Act is the same type of toilet paper the dollar's printed on.
Well, I think there are still a number of successful cases with Freedom of Information Act, but I agree with you in principle that if national security is put on the table as a blocking agent for a Freedom of Information inquiry, the information is not revealed. I mean, gosh, you can go into these trade union pacts that we're trying to shove down Europe's throat. One of them is to remove the information on food products in Europe. And that is the main lightning rod for demonstrations in 45 or 46 cities in Europe. They want proof of labeling for foods. No, we got this is a breakdown. The whole system's breaking down. It's becoming a grand tragedy, and it's too late in the game. We've got significant momentum and acceleration. I mean, I studied my physics. We've got acceleration of breakdown. Just you want an analogy? Just think of an enormous choo-choo train going downhill, and it jumped the tracks. It's going way downhill. And it's jumped the tracks. It's going to go into the chasm, if not already. You can't say, well, let's catch that. It's too late. We interrupted all the catch efforts and put on a new war and put on a new patch, a patch in Europe for, funding operations from the Prince Draghi Euro Central Bank. We put on QE. We put on 0%. Instead of doing fixes like liquidating the big banks in New York in 2008, we made them too big to fail. We allowed them to be beneficiaries of QE. We gave them TARP money on false pretenses. We've refused to put them in jail and shut them down because it would kill all the derivatives that control the foundations to the dollar-based system. Now, this is way too late to fix the system. Now it's a matter of how do you take defensive measures on the guaranteed implosion? And except for my clients and people who are teachable, let them lose their life savings. Let them take a 30% bail-in haircut. Because after people I get some very close people who don't buy at all what I'm preaching. And they say, well, I got a $2 million 401k account. It's a result of 25 years of hard work, Jim. I'm not going to put that at risk with gold. I said, okay. No, they're going to be calling up one of two options, one of two paths. they're going to be calling up and say, gosh, I wish I had done something differently because my $2.0 million 401k is only worth $1.4 million now, and that's a lot of money I had to kiss goodbye. But there's another path. But it was probably a good thing to support the U.S. government with that money. and I have prepared what I'm going to tell them. Yes, you need to buy a boat for that Wall Street executive, and you need to pay for the bombs and the drones that were dropping on Pakistan. Yes, it went to a very real need. No, I don't know. I think there's going to be some real self-denial when a lot of people are told that their bank accounts and their stock funds and their 401ks and other self-directed pension funds lost a lot of money. There's going to be a lot of self-denial. They're going to say, well, I still got a lot. Or, well, I guess I supported the system and our way of life. And,
Jim,
maybe it could have been worse.
They're going to lose.
No, I don't think they're going to lose. I don't think so. I think they're going to lose a significant portion. But I will say this. When we get into this sequence of new shice dollars and their devaluations, you're going to see 30%. If you see 30% devaluations, it's lost half its purchase power. It's lost half its value in my book. And I have some family members who tell me, Jim, it hasn't lost anything. It's still got the same dollar amount on my monthly statement. And I say, yeah, but you're not considering what price inflation was and lost purchase power. You're going to lose value. You're not going to lose nominal stated value that you don't comprehend as relating to purchase power. The fact that you don't understand it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It means you don't understand it. But when we get into this sequence of 30% devaluations, I don't think they're going to stop at 2. When the independent auditors come in and demonstrate that the U.S. does not have any gold behind its new shice dollar, that they were lying again for the 800th time. And if you get 5 straight 30% devaluations, I believe you're pretty close to a 90% devaluation of the new shit dollar. So when you say they're going to lose it all, I disagree. I say they're going to lose the great majority of it.
That's right.
Now, when you
what's left won't be able to buy anything.
Well, it means that they're going to be sitting on money that has a potential value in other ways, certainly not in purchase power. But they might be able to go out and buy that foundry that's in the suburbs with 15 of their favorite friends and use those shit dollars to buy the foundry and get some new employees in there and maybe some Chinese capital funding and start new. Don't overlook the opportunity for recapitalization of the U.S. economy after the damage, because there are going to be a lot of plants, equipments, factories, foundries, farms. They're going to be up for sale by distressed owners. And the race will be on for the Americans who've been damaged and suffer the devaluations to buy them up before foreigners do, as a carpetbagging exercise that has already begun. 1/3 of all the major American city commercial buildings are owned by the Chinese. The race is on. They bought the abandoned Westinghouse manufacturing plant outside of Pittsburgh, where I grew up. The Chinese bought it. The Chinese are buying a number of steel mills along the Ohio and Monongahela River. The Chinese bought them. What they do with them is their matter. I think they're waiting for the reset in order to recapitalize portions of the U.S. economy. Americans who've lost a great deal of their purchasing power with the reset coming and the devaluations coming, they can put it to work, or they can just cry in their beer. I hope a bunch of them save themselves by buying a lot of gold and silver before the damage takes place. And I'm happy to say that just in the last 6 months of this year, there have been a lot of clients who come on to the hat trick letter and they say, I made some good decisions in the last few months. I'm really happy that I bought, X $1,000 worth. One of them was $1 million worth. Another one was $500,000 worth. A friend of mine in Costa Rica, a former pilot who bounces around from California, Panama, and Costa Rica. He told me, Jim, I bought $500,000 worth of silver. I'm going to buy more. I said, good. You'll be happy when it goes up to $150 and continues on its upward rise. He said, you really think it's going to be that high? I said, yeah, minimum. Okay, so we got a lot of damage coming, and people can get out of the way, but a lot of people will not convert their private pension funds. I'm referring to 401ks to companies and IRAs to individuals. They won't convert them because they don't want to pay the tax. And it's a pretty tough pill to swallow to say, all right, I'm going to pay a 40% tax on that and hope that silver triples, which would more than cover my loss or my expense. And I said, don't worry, it's going to do a lot more than triple. And I don't know, I think I'll just leave it alone. Okay, leave it alone. I don't care anymore. I don't care, really. I don't care. I care about my clients and potential clients. That's it. All right, well, let me just mention, again, all listeners out there, www.goldenjackass.com. No hyphens in there. Goldenjackass.com. I got to close out. I'm running out of voice, and we've gone on for a while here. But, go to the website. There's lots of links on the main website, main web page, the public web page. A lot of links for articles, public articles. There aren't anywhere near as many public articles. I used to write over 40 a year, almost every single week from 2000. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and almost 10. Then I went to every couple weeks. Now I'm doing about one a month. I got one planned for the next couple of days. It's going to be on why QE and 0% will go on forever until the U.S. dollar is replaced. That's going to be the theme of the article. I haven't figured out a good title on it yet, but there are a lot of public articles out there, and there are a lot of links, a lot of them. There are 3 or 4 each month at least. I just got another invitation today for a radio interview, and challenge I have is, how do we make it different from the last radio interview? I don't mean the last one with the same host. I mean the last one that was done 3 days ago. But that's why I asked guys like you, Dave, to come up with topics, and I love the topics. They were topics that were a little different. They can't be completely different because we still live in the same world with the same crises. But anyway, there are a lot of radio interviews on the public page, and I invite people to go check out the free material and then sign up for the hat trick letter. I don't think you'll be disappointed. There's plenty in there to keep your interest and to stimulate your thoughts and to challenge some maybe notions that you've been maintaining for a while that need to be challenged. So this is a labor of love. It's been 11 years now, and I do get tired, but I got a lot of energy, and I'm able to get recharged. I take a lot of afternoon naps. Sometimes I take them when I got a good night's sleep. I don't care. I'm going to take another nap because I can. I take another nap, and I'm 40-minute nap or whatever, and I get up and I'm good to go. And next night maybe I don't sleep quite as much, but I'm doing okay with recharging myself, and it's not easy. This is a battle zone. I feel like a warrior, and I'm subjected to heavy stress once in a while. I don't have the luxury of making some goony ass forecast just because it's consistent with major news. No, most of the major news is wrong. 80% of the major news is just plain wrong, which means the opposite, 80% of the internet is basically correct. Neither one is 100% correct. I get clowns telling me, Jim, why do you rely so much on internet stories? I say, well, you got to check the source. I have a lot of internet sources. UK Telegraph is really quite remarkable, and out of London, even though out of the heart of the beast, it really has some controversial, correct interpretations that, quote, stand my test of time. You think I'm so stupid that I'll accept some fantastic Steve Quayle-like bullshit article and run with it? No, I look for it standing the test of time. And if they correctly follow the sequence, then I attribute more credibility to it. I've got experience in marketing research. I know what's important, and I know how to test certain sources, but that doesn't fit with the X, Y, and Z. And I come up with a nonsense answer. I said, well, it sounds like your claim is nuts. Or, that's interesting. It does fit with A, B, and C. Let's look into that further. It's called marketing research. It's called critical thinking. Americans ought to try it once in a while.
That'd be different.
But, 10% of them do, and I applaud them. I'm being much more careful now. 10% of Americans use their brain. There's a big difference between being educated and intelligent and being aware and, say, on the edge of being an intellectual. The very big difference, and the principal difference to cross that bridge, is curiosity and willingness to test your own premises. Wait a minute, I've thought that for 15 years. You mean that's wrong? Yeah, it's wrong. Here are 4 things that prove it's wrong or provide a really strong case that what you believed for 15 years is wrong. If you hear back, well, I don't want to change that because I got so much depending on it, you're not dealing with an intellectual. They're not capable of jumping the gulf between smart, intelligent, and intellectual and aware. They're not capable. Oh, no. I could go on and on about the psychological factors. It's very, very disturbing. Smart people refuse to look at new evidence. Oh, no, I've always looked at the New York Times. I've relied on the New York Times for my entire adult life.
Or the Wall Street Journal.
Well, fine. Yeah, right. I asked them, who owns the New York Times and who owns the Wall Street Journal? And have they been guilty of significant fraud charges in the last 5 years? Oh, gee, I don't know. Then you're not very smart, John. That's what I say. All right, you guys. Got to wrap this up.
Hey, Jim, thanks a lot for your time. This has been great.
Really appreciate you coming on and sharing all your insights with us. Sincerely, it's been awesome. And
well, it's been a pleasure. I got stuff to do. I got to go. And
well, thank you very much, Mr. Willie, and we will talk with you soon.